Every morning at exactly 6:04 a.m., a boy no one knew stepped through the doors of Dottie's diner. He never spoke, never ordered, just sat alone, staring at a broken watch strapped to his wrist like it still kept time for someone he was waiting for. Most folks looked right through him. But Ruth noticed. And the morning he didn't show up, everything unraveled. Every morning, just before the sun painted gold across the rusted roof of Dottie's diner, the boy walked in. Always at 6:04 a.m., never early, never late. He was maybe 10, maybe younger, rail-thin with a jaw set like someone 3 times his age. His sneakers were worn bald at the toes. His coat didn't match the season. But what caught Ruth's eye first wasn't his silence. It was the watch. A cracked, busted wristwatch he kept staring at like it still told him something important. The regulars didn't notice him. Truckers too tired, retirees too grumpy. But Ruth, 62, with silver hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun and the kind of tired eyes that could still see everything, noticed. She'd been slinging eggs at Dottie's for almost 2 decades. But something about this boy set her spine ticking. There was no backpack, no school papers, no cell phone. Just that watch. And the way he sat like he was waiting for something or someone who'd never come. On his 4th visit, Ruth decided to act. She dropped a plate of eggs and toast in front of him and muttered, loud enough for the counter to hear. Truck driver paid and left before I realized he'd ordered 2. The boy didn't move at first, just stared at the food like it might be poisoned or a trick. Ruth busied herself behind the coffee machine, watching from the corner of her eye. Finally, he picked up the fork, ate every bite, no crumbs left. The next morning, it was pancakes. After that, oatmeal with extra cinnamon. Ruth created stories each time. A salesman forgot his plate. The cook messed up an order. Someone paid for the next customer on a whim. But the truth? She paid for them herself. A few dollars off her tips, the ones she was saving for new tires before winter. She told no one. The boy never asked why. Never spoke more than thank you. But every morning he came back. And every morning, she made sure he didn't leave hungry. The cook, Joe, noticed first. He was a crusty Vietnam vet with grease-stained fingers and a heart he pretended didn't work anymore. Kid gives me the creeps, he grunted one morning. Always quiet, watching, like he's casing the place. Ruth didn't argue. She just said, he's not casing anything, Joe. He's surviving. But the rumors started to swirl. Shirley, who worked the swing shift, swore the boy had been sleeping behind the abandoned gas station 3 blocks over. Others claimed he was part of a gang running drugs down from Syracuse. Ruth rolled her eyes but kept her ears open. One evening, she found a crumpled gas station receipt under his booth. On the back, a number and a name. Teddy. 3 nights only. Something about it chilled her. She waited until after her shift, pulled out her old flip phone, and dialed. A man answered, voice gruff, like he'd been woken up mid-cigarette. When she asked about the boy, he hung up. No goodbye, just dead silence. That night, Ruth didn't sleep. She'd seen enough broken kids in her life to know when something smelled off. 2 mornings later, the county sheriff's deputies rolled into the parking lot, all badge and swagger. They came inside asking questions about a boy seen near the woods off Highway 3. Said a neighbor called it in. Described him as suspicious. Ruth played dumb, wiping tables slowly, feigning confusion. Boy? We get lots of boys. Can't say I recall one like that. But the kid knew. When the deputies walked past his booth, his shoulders locked tight. Eyes stayed down, but Ruth saw the tension, like a bird ready to bolt. When they left, she slipped him an extra muffin and said low, they're sniffing. Might be time you moved along. For the first time since he walked through the doors of Dottie's, the boy looked her straight in the eyes. He didn't speak, just gave a slow nod like a soldier receiving orders. Ruth didn't know then, but that single moment would change both of their lives forever. That night, well past closing, someone knocked on Ruth's door. Hard, urgent. She grabbed the old baseball bat by the fridge and opened it just enough to see. There he was, soaked to the bone, trembling, holding a canvas army bag stained deep maroon. He didn't wait to be invited. just stepped inside and dropped onto her worn couch. "I didn't do anything," he whispered, voice raw and cracked. "But he made me run." Ruth didn't ask who. She made tea, draped her old quilt around him, and sat down beside the bag. When she finally opened it, what she found made her breath catch. A military photo, him and a man in uniform, and a folded letter marked, "Read only if I'm gone." The handwriting was sharp, disciplined. The letter told of a man discharged under disgrace. An uncle, violent, paranoid, dangerous. Ruth didn't need details. She'd lived enough to read between the lines. Whatever had happened, it hadn't been the boy's fault. But the state wouldn't care. Cops wouldn't care. She had a decision to make, and fast. The next morning, Ruth called an old friend, a retired judge who owed her a favor for keeping quiet about his late-night coffee and pie visits with the high school art teacher. Then she called a trucker named Red, who owed her for bailing him out of a drunk tank years ago. In 12 hours, Ruth had a plan. The boy's only living relative was a grandfather, a Marine vet who lived in a fishing cabin in northern Maine, completely off-grid. The man didn't even know he had a grandson. Ruth wasn't about to let some overworked social worker toss the kid into a system that would chew him up and forget his name. So she packed up her old Buick, tucked the canvas bag in the back seat, and hit the road with the boy buckled in beside her. It wasn't the first time she'd driven without a map, but this time, the stakes were everything. Every diner they stopped at, every gas station, Ruth watched the shadows. The boy talked a little now, said he missed his uncle but never felt safe. Said he watched the clock because his dad used to say, "If I'm not back by 6:04, go to Plan B." Whatever Plan B was, the boy had followed it, and it led him to Ruth. They arrived at the cabin on the third night, just before dusk. The man who opened the door looked like he'd been carved from granite. Tall, white beard, Marine tattoo still sharp on his forearm. When he saw the boy, he didn't blink, didn't speak, just stepped aside, wide enough for them to enter. Ruth handed him the letter. He read it, then sat down hard. No questions, no tears, just the quiet understanding of a man who'd seen too much to be surprised anymore. Ruth didn't stay long. She left the boy with his grandfather, a stocked fridge, and the only photograph he had of his father. Driving away, she checked her rearview mirror once, saw the two of them standing on the porch. The boy had his arm around the old man's waist. For the first time, he wasn't holding the watch. He wasn't looking at the time. Weeks later, a plaque appeared on the wall of Dottie's diner. It read, "In honor of every child who waits to be noticed." No ceremony, no big announcement, just a quiet corner booth that stayed open for whoever needed it. Ruth kept working, kept serving coffee with a wink and a wisecrack. But now she paid closer attention to the kids who came in alone. She listened for silences, watched the way they looked at full plates. One morning, a teenage girl with bruises under her sleeves sat in the boys' old booth. Ruth didn't ask questions, just brought her French toast and left the bill blank. Years later, long after Ruth had retired and Dottie's had been bought by a new owner, a letter arrived in the mail. Handwritten. The penmanship was careful. "Dear Miss Ruth," it began, "I still wear the watch. It doesn't work, but I don't need it to anymore. My grandpa says I smile more now. I fish. I eat too much. I sleep with both eyes closed. You didn't just feed me, you believed me. I think about you every morning at 6:04. That's the time my life changed. Thank you, Teddy." You see, sometimes a child walks into a diner and asks for nothing, but they're asking for everything. Food, safety, a reason to stay. And sometimes the person who notices is just a tired waitress with tired knees and a heart that hasn't quite given up. The lesson isn't complicated. Be the person who notices. Be the one who doesn't ask why someone is hungry, just feeds them. Because behind every plate of eggs you serve, there might be a child clinging to hope like a broken watch that no longer ticks, but still means everything.